I do not tend to take a lot of advice from men, even the most successful men. And I mean advice in the form of self-help books, podcasts with successful men, or just men in general. I tend to take their advice with a grain of salt because I do not think it is applicable to women and mothers in particular. And I was reminded of this listening to the Diary of a CEO with Casey Neistat. I don't know Casey Neistat very well. I know of him, obviously, but I don't follow him. I never did. And so limited knowledge base. But I was listening to his podcast with Stephen Bartlett, and it was really interesting. But I was really hung up on this fact that they talk a lot about how he became a father at a very young age. He was like 15 years old and he had his first kid. And after breaking up with his then girlfriend at the time and the mother of his child at 17 or 18 years old, he moved from wherever they were in Connecticut and he moved to New York. And he talks about how that journey required him to be fearless, to have risk, to be willing to have risk. He persevered, he was patient, but he was willing to kind of do the gritty stuff. He slept on somebody's couch. He lived in a halfway house. Like, he lived in a home with 10 other people, like whatever it might be. Like, he was willing to do the stuff that sucks to find success and whatever success meant to him. But he was willing to grind it out and to be very patient and to really persevere. And he keeps talking about that, how he was just like willing to do it. And the whole time I'm listening thinking, where's your kid? None of these things are possible with a 2-year-old baby. You can't sleep on somebody else's couch with your 2-year-old baby. You can't stay out till 4 a.m. with your 2-year-old baby. You can't live in a halfway house like that with a 2-year-old baby because he claims he bribed his way into it. Like, you don't do that with a 2-year-old. And he's talking about how he doesn't have money for a taxi or anything like that. And the whole time I'm thinking, where's this kid? This kid is probably with his mom. This kid is with his mom probably 90% of the time. She's probably doing 90% of the work, paying for 90% of the things, and raising him essentially on her own. And this is not to say that Casey's not a good dad, that he didn't participate financially or at all, because I don't know. He doesn't talk about it. And that is why I can't take his advice. I want to know what happened there. If it were a mother telling that story, you would know what she did for childcare, how she paid for everything for that child, where they lived, who supported her, what was her village like. Like, you'd know those things because those things were critical to her success if she had success. But for him, it wasn't critical because he had her. Men have women. That is the biggest lesson I've learned. When they tell us any kind of advice about how they became successful, it's because they had women supporting them. The problem is, if that woman, if she, his baby mama, wanted to do the same thing that Casey did, would that have been possible? Could she have left her kid with him for 90% of the time and participated slightly and maybe monetarily, but mostly was off sleeping on couches in New York City? Could she have done that? Probably not. And if she had, she would have been frowned upon for doing so. And that's the difference. He is held up on this pedestal for doing this work and for becoming successful and doing it the hard way. But if she were to do the same thing, she would be called a bad mother who put her career before her kid. And that is why I don't take advice from men, even successful men, because their advice is not applicable to women. It just doesn't apply in today's society, and it doesn't apply fucking logistically because it's impossible to do the things they do because we are held to a different standard and expected to do more than they do.